किसी की मुस्कुराहटों पे हो निसार.
Someone who has been a bureaucrat that has gone and convinced ministers, chief ministers, even the Prime Minister of India to actually go ahead and see his view. Anil Swarup ji, welcome to Let's Chat with GB. Even when at a secretary level you got rejection, but you would still take your chance with the chief minister.
I learned it the hard way.
One of your first postings, was it SDM Hardoi?
Yes, it was SDM.
Where you actually had your first run-in with a politician?
Baptism by fire, actually.
Right.
Mrs. Indira Gandhi had been assassinated. And then all hell broke loose.
What you see happening in the AI context in the world today?
The problem that I see in the government, whichever government, is not artificial intelligence. It is attitudinal intelligence. Mr. Modi is so fond of technology. I can't tell you how fond he is of technology. But why isn't Prime Minister Office digitizing its files?
Where did the aspiration, to join the services really come from?
You know, the opportunities that you have in this service are absolutely amazing.
A myth about IS officers that you'd like to bust. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Chat with GB. Today, we are going to have an absolutely mind-blowing episode because I have with me someone who has not written 4, but I just learned 5 books. Someone who has been a bureaucrat that has gone and convinced ministers, chief ministers, even the Prime Minister of India to actually go ahead and see his view. Someone who has gone in there and taken some tough decisions when it came to coal, when it came to education, and is today revolutionizing the space of, management insights. I also have his latest book, which is You Can Make It Happen. Anil Swarup ji, welcome to Let's Chat with GB.
Good afternoon.
And again, it is a pleasure to have you here. And I know you had a very, very hectic schedule, speaking on multiple stages and multiple platforms.
I love it.
And it is a pleasure to have you here with us as well. So I believe, and of course, we're going to come to the book. We're going to come to a lot of the other great things that you've been doing. But not many people have spoken about your journey. Where did it all begin? So I'd love to know where did you grow up, and where did the aspiration to join the services really come from? Because of a lot of content that I've seen of you, not many people actually have spoken about that.
See, my father was in government service, so
Okay.
I used to travel with him wherever he got posted.
Right.
Oh, I recall when I was about 11 or 12 years of age,
Right.
I saw a piece of paper. And when I read it, I found that my dad had actually worked out what would I do to become an IS officer. He had planned it out.
For you.
Yes.
Amazing.
I didn't follow exactly the same
Right,
path, but
right.
he had drawn that path for me.
Right.
At that point in time, I didn't know what IS was.
Right.
So once I read that, I started discussing with people. Then I met a couple of IS officers.
Right.
And I distinctly remember one of my father's colleagues, his son got into the IS. I had the occasion to interact with him.
Right.
And I was gradually coming to understand this is the service for me. So then what I did was I made my father's dream into my own dream.
Love it.
And that became a passion with me. Throughout, I was working towards becoming a civil servant, an IS officer.
Fantastic. I just love that you came across that piece of paper. When you said you were 11 years old, and then obviously conversations started happening.
At that point in
around
time,
that.
it didn't make much of a sense to me, except
Right.
for the fact that I was wondering, my dad has worked out. I mean, he was a great planner. He's a very meticulous planner.
Fantastic.
So I learned that planning part, the discipline part from him.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. Like I said, again, going through your books and, all the work that you've done, I see that, how much of a role, that has actually played in your career as well. Coming to, the services and getting into the services, and I was, reading about, some stunning facts that you have 180 people who will be accepted broadly, every year. And we have almost 10 lakh people who are
Yeah.
sitting for the exams.
Yeah.
Which would mean that your chances of getting picked is actually 0.00018%.
Yeah.
Yet, people would be, year after year,
Yeah.
repeatedly taking the exam to go ahead and crack it. What is really the motivation for someone to go ahead and do that?
Each one will have his own motivation. I may not be the right person to tell what their motivation would
Right.
be. My motivation was very clear. If I could get into a position where I could do something,
Right.
that desire was there to do something. Of course, that desire changed a bit in the sense that initially I wanted to change others.
Right.
And then later on I discovered I have to change myself. But that desire to do something was there. In fact, I write in my first book that I became an IS officer because my dad wanted me to become an IS officer. But I write in the last chapter that if I were to be born again, I'd like to be an IS officer. And people ask me why. The opportunities that you have in this service are absolutely amazing. You can do good, you can do bad. You can be honest, you can be dishonest. You can be efficient, you can be inefficient. The enormous choice that you have in the service is quite stupendous. I don't think any other service gives that choice of such extremes, yet surviving or thriving, whichever way you want to look at. So that's why I thought IS was for me. And probably, I don't think I'll be able to make it now. Now the competition that you tell me is much tougher than when I got into the IS. But if I could, I would like to become an IS officer.
I'm sure you're being very modest there, because I also did hear that you actually were one of the top 20 amongst all of those services. And being from UP, you were picked for the UP cadre,
Yes.
which can only happen if you are extremely knowledgeable and gifted. So I'm sure you'd have cracked it even today. So interestingly, I believe initially you actually were in the IPS for about a year, and then you transitioned.
Yes.
So how did that really work out?
Because I wanted to become an IS officer. In the first year, I didn't get good marks. I didn't get the desired rank to be in the IS because the top few are in the IS.
Right.
So I tried to understand why I didn't do well.
Yeah.
And I came to a conclusion. Of course, these days when I'm guiding aspirants to civil service, I tell them what went wrong in the first year and how I corrected in the second year. And it made a world of a difference.
Interesting. And one of your first postings, was it SDM Hardoi?
Yes, it was SDM.
Where you actually had your first run-in with a politician?
It was really
an October matter?
Baptism by fire, actually.
Right.
Mrs. Indira Gandhi had been assassinated. And then all hell broke loose. Members of the ruling party were actually burning shops of minority communities.
Right.
So as sub-divisional magistrate, my job was to maintain law and order.
Right.
And while doing that, I got this information. There was no evidence, but information that a very powerful MLA of the ruling party was behind this arson. So I had a bit of a dilemma. At that point in time, I didn't have that clarity of thought, which I developed over a period of time. So after debating for a while, I decided to make an NSA case, National Security Act case, under which I could have detained him for a year. But the decision-making authority was the district magistrate. So I took it across to the district magistrate, and this MLA got the wind of it, that someone had dared to move a file against him. So he went to Lucknow, spoke to someone, and I was summoned to Lucknow, to a very senior officer's room. And as I walked into his room, he said, Anil, tumne kya kar diya? So I told him what I had done. So he said, kyun ladte ho politicians? Why do you fight with politicians? I said, I'm not fighting with politicians. I've just moved a file. The district magistrate can reject it. Arey nahi, tumhe to abhi, you have a long career ahead of you. Ye sab kya karte rehte ho? Maine kaha, sahab, let him reject the file. Nahi, you take the file back. So then I used a phrase which probably I would not use now. I said, sir, wo to teer hai, kaman se nikal gaya.
I love that.
Ab वापस कैसे आएगा? The conversation ended. I returned to my district and I was transferred out within 24 hours.
Crazy. And truly, that was such a crazy time, because I'm sure many of our viewers and listeners, may not even be aware of what happened in 1984. But I was an 8-year-old, and our home in New Friends Colony, we had a sick gentleman who was in the house next to us, another who was 4 houses down, another was 6-7 houses down. And we saw firsthand, the arson and the looting and, everything else that happened and terrible times. And I think you were able to control that in your district, I think, which is quite commendable.
I as I reflect on those times, I do believe that administration can play a very important role in such situations.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I did. Though I got transferred, but I think situation was under control.
Right.
I benefited out of what I did here in the adjoining district, though I was transferred here.
Right.
But when I myself became a district magistrate,
Right.
those were even worse days of Ram Janmabhoomi agitation, 1991.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to believe that in those days, except my district, all other districts were in curfew. And the reason why my district was not in curfew was the reputation that I carried from Hardoi, that he will not spare even the most powerful if someone does anything wrong.
Yeah.
So it helps. Reputation helps.
I agree. I think repetition, credibility, and of course you mentioned Babri Masjid, which was again a very difficult time. But there was again a third instance I was reading about, which is during the Mandal Commission, where your office was actually get out by students, and there were people between the ages of 14 to 18, right? And there were a lot of these were girl students.
All of them were girls,
right? So you can't even have an aggressive stance towards them. And I remember the Mandal Commission days because I was actually in Sanaa at the time. This would have been 1991, 92.
Yes.
And I remember like a lot of times, there was a lot of so much was happening in terms of self-immolation and such
Yes.
a crazy time. But you said there too, just by power of conversation, by taking a chair and sitting between all of these, students, you were actually able to convince them. Would love to hear about that instance as well.
What had happened was that this was happening, self-emulation was happening and things like that. So even in Lakhimpur Kheri, I suddenly a lot of shouting from outside. I was sitting in my office.
Right.
And someone told me there are about 1,500 girls who get out the collectorate. Now, what do you do to girls? You can't use force. So I said, okay, kursi bahan nikalo, baithenge unke saath. I'll sit with them. So he brought a kursi out and I sat there along with all the girls and entered into a conversation with them. And while conversing with them, I tried to understand what is your problem. They were all shouting, very incoherently shouting. So I then asked them, have you read Mandal Commission report? I'd like to discuss it with you. I thought, let me understand.
Right.
So I asked, aapne padhi? No one had read it. And they had to say, have you not read it?
Yeah.
Then I asked them, aapne dekhi hai Mandal Commission report? Kitne volumes hain, kya hai? No one had seen it. मैंने कहा देखिए आपने ना देखी है ना पढ़ी है, दूसरे के कहने से यू आर एजिटेटिंग, पढ़ लीजिए, हो सकता है आपको कुछ चीजें समझ में आ जाए. और फिर आप क्यों कर रही हैं एजिटेट? इसलिए कर रही हैं, यू वांट टू गेट गवर्नमेंट सर्विस. देन आई सेड वो तो आपको वैसे ही नहीं मिलेगी. भाई हमने कहा दरोगा जी देख रहे हैं, सबके नाम नोट कर रहे हैं. For every government job, you have to seek a police verification. And when it goes for verification, your name will be there, you won't get the job.
वैसे खाली हो गया होगा.
So धीरे धीरे खाली होना शुरू हुआ. पूरा खाली नहीं हुआ. फिर 8-10 बज गई. फिर भी उनको मैं अपने चेम्बर में ले गया, उनके पेरेंट्स को बुलाया मैंने. I had a cup of tea with all of them. Right. And then told them, you may have a point, but how does this help? Yeah. So gradually they convinced, they went away. I was gradually learning that even with your so-called adversaries, you must have communication.
So true.
Don't stop communication. Agreed. When you stop communication, then trouble gets multiplied. Misunderstandings get multiplied. So have a conversation.
Very true.
Worst case scenario, it will be where it is.
Very
but
true.
The chances are it will improve. And it held me. It stood me such good stead later on in my career when I handled much more sensitive assignments where conversations with so-called opposition really helped me.
Correct. No, I love that. In fact, we'll talk about some of the, elements in your book as well. Where I was reading this book and I said, if not the IAS, I think you would have been a master salesperson, right? Like a top, CEO of, a company, to the top of corporate India or even global, just by virtue of your power of your self-conviction, okay, and then being able to, be in conversation and convince others. I think you would not take no for an answer, right? And there were times...
I would put it slightly differently. I would take no for an answer. But I will still pursue and get a yes subsequently.
Brilliant.
I would not convey to him that I am not taking no for. I never told I won't take no for an answer.
Right.
I distinctly remember many situations I started with agreeing with the guy who was not agreeing with me.
Amazing.
I never said I won't take no for an answer. I said, sahi keh rahe hain. Then bring him out gradually. I also learned it the hard way.
Right.
That by saying no or not accepting no for an answer, you are creating barriers. I have to convey the impression that I am trying to understand that person. Yeah. I don't have a preconceived notion of assuming that what I am saying is the right thing, but I am seeking your indulgence to help me explain to you my point of view. Then you take a call.
Love it.
If you disagree with me, fair enough. But don't disagree with me without listening to me. So lend me your ears, as it were.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people at home, you just got a master class, okay, in a lesson in life and sales. The first rule of sales is always agree with the person on the other side. And if you have an opinion which is contradictory, okay, start with agreement and work towards, a solution, because people who fight, they kind of move apart. Disagreement is never a good thing. So I think master lesson learned, right up front over there itself. And I think it was amazing, in terms of how you were able to, even when at a secretary level you got rejection, but you would still take a chance with the chief minister.
Yes.
I think was it in Chhattisgarh, where...
In many cases, I mean, as I said, people ask me, you speak with so much confidence. I tell them, you were seeing a finished product, Anil Swarup. I learned it the hard way. I fell, I stood up, again fell, I learned. And then I discovered that it is good to hear out the other person. Right. He may have a point of view.
Right.
And ultimately it will help you if you hear him out. Yeah. So the real test came when I was doing this scheme called Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana. This is a health insurance scheme where I had to market this scheme to states which belong to a different party altogether.
Great.
And so I had to depoliticize a central government scheme and present a value proposition to the person that I was talking to.
Right.
And it worked brilliantly. In some cases it didn't, but in many cases it did. So the Chhattisgarh that you mentioned, where I failed totally with the chief secretary. When I went to speak to the chief secretary, he was very senior to me. He said, Anil, chai piyo, so chai pi. He said, ये तुम क्या लेकर आए हो? तुम्हारा इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कौन यहाँ इलेक्ट्रॉनिक gizmo चलाएगा? It's a tribal state. और तुम चाय पियो और जाओ तुम अपना किसी और स्टेट में देखो. I was virtually thrown out of the room.
Yeah.
And what do? I came out totally depressed. It was writ large on my face. Right. So a batchmate of mine who happened to be secretary to the chief minister, he saw me, क्या हो गया? मैंने कहा तुम्हारे chief secretary सुनता ही नहीं है. तो बोले क्या है? तो मैंने उसको बताया. बोले ऐसा करो, chief minister के साथ 5 मिनट के पास ले जाऊंगा. उनको कहीं जाना है. Raman Singh was a brilliant chap. I mean, I became an admirer in the first meeting itself. So he said, चलो ले चलता हूँ, 5 मिनट बता देना. Another thing, by that time I had learned that you have to do your homework. You structure your thoughts in advance so that you don't fumble at that point in time. So while driving down to his residence, I had about 10-15 minutes. I structured my thoughts. Right. And when we reached his residence, Raman Singh looked at his watch, indicating that he doesn't have time. He said, sir, मेरा ये batchmate है, आपसे 5 मिनट के लिए अच्छा बताइए. वो खड़े मैंने उनको 5 मिनट में I rattled out whatever I could.
Wow.
He appeared to have understood it. Sharp man.
He had a medical background also.
Yeah, that helped. अरे ये तो बड़ी अच्छी स्कीम लाई है, बैठिए. उसने अरे भाई देखो उसे जरा पोस्टपोन करो. बैठ गए वहां पर. फिर वो कहते हैं कि बड़ी अच्छी स्कीम है आपकी. अरे भाई इधर चीफ सेक्रेटरी को बुलाओ. Now imagine the chief secretary would throw me out of the room, walks into the room and looks at me sitting in front of the chief minister. And the first sentence that the chief minister says is, देखिए कितनी अच्छी स्कीम लेकर आए हैं. I'm now the chief secretary, didn't know what to do. हाँ सर कुछ मैंने भी कुछ. But then rest is history, as they say. And success of RSBY in Chhattisgarh was on account of Raman Singh, an absolutely perceptive chief minister.
And it became almost a case study for the rest of the country.
Yes.
The success they had there.
Yes.
Perhaps even Punjab, where I think Mr. Badal called you in and he asked you for a figure. And I think you gave him 60 crores.
It was another funny incident. Again, another batchmate of mine who happened to be resident commissioner, she rang me up. She said, Anil, वो तुम्हारी स्कीम के लिए चीफ मिनिस्टर के पास 20 मिनट हैं. तुम आके बता दो उनको. He had come to Delhi. तो मैंने कहा ऐसा करो तुम if you can arrange for a projector and a screen. बोले वो है यहाँ पर हम कर रहे हैं तुम आओ. तो मैं अपना जल्दी से अपना पेन ड्राइव उठाई. मैं भागा यहाँ पे कबरतला हाउस है कौन सा है वहाँ पर चीफ मिनिस्टर वाज देयर. मैंने लगाई और प्रेजेंटेशन किया. 10 मिनट में I tried to explain. Now in any case, he had beard and all. I couldn't make out whether he's understanding. No expression. He's
a poker face.
Poker face.
Yeah.
And after I had completed, then he spoke in Punjabi. I can understand Punjabi very well. I can't speak.
Right.
So then he asked me, ये बताइए कितना पैसा लगेगा पूरी स्टेट के लिए. तो मैंने अपना कैलकुलेट किया. I told him 60 crores. अच्छा ठीक है. जरा वो फाइनेंस सेक्रेटरी को फोन मिला, फाइनेंस कमिश्नर को. सो फोन मिलाएगा फाइनेंस कमिश्नर एंड इन फ्रंट ऑफ मी ही इज टेलिंग हिम, अरे भाई वो जो वहाँ बचा था ना आपका 60 करोड़ जो हम कल बता रहे थे, वो एक स्कीम है सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की, वो एलोकेट कर दी. फोन पे एलोकेशन हो गया उसका 60 करोड़ का. मैं कमरे में आया, कैलकुलेट किया तो मालूम पड़ा 6 करोड़ चाहिए, नॉट 60 करोड़. सो I mean, this brings me to a slightly different point. Sure. When I began my career, I was very anti-politicians. I thought all were rascals and ruffians. Agreed. But gradually I was discovering them outstanding people. Many of them absolutely outstanding.
I think in the book you actually mentioned that, you're initially you had your reservations, but then you realized that, just like most people, there will be the good, there will be the bad, there will be the ugly. So I think you realized, that you did have to change your perception a little bit over there.
Yeah, because, since you mentioned this book, the fundamental principle behind this book is you can't do a nut to others. You change yourself. Yeah. So as much as you can. Yeah.
So I think, and since you brought up, the health, policies and especially, RSBY, this actually became a precursor to what today everyone knows as Ayushman Bharat as well. And I was just wondering in terms of, the mechanics of Ayushman Bharat, and I was talking to the team, yesterday, and like, so who picks up the bill? How does it work?
Yeah.
Because I think when RSBY was coming in, you said 30 rupees is going to be, the amount that someone will have to invest. The smart card was still there.
Yes.
I think there was also a lot of conversations that are happening with private insurers, PSU insurers. Hospitals had a lot of reservations, especially the 5-star hospitals.
Everyone had reservations.
Right.
No one thought insurance will work in this country.
Yeah.
At that point in time when we started this scheme, RSBY, the insurance coverage was not even 5% in the country. Yeah. It was very poor. And no one believed that insurance will work in India. Not many believed. So did insurance companies, so did hospitals. No one. State governments also initially were very reluctant. And hence I was there for 7 years. No bureaucrat has so much time to, visualize, conceptualize, articulate, implement, and evaluate a scheme, which I had the fortune. But as I said, I learned as it went along. Many mistakes were committed. We improved upon it. That flexibility was there in the scheme and we could do it.
And you, of course, became like a global case study.
It is.
ILO, UNDP.
Yes, they all
we're talking about top organizations around the world calling you in to,
they wanted me to do it in other countries.
And of course, towards, the almost fag end of your career, you actually had the Prime Minister who called you in. And he wanted your opinion. And you were questioning the secretary saying that, what is my stand-I? Why should I be coming in? But I would love to hear about that day. What happened there?
Actually, I was 3 months before my retirement, or 4 months. It was March 2018. I get a call from Principal Secretary to Prime Minister. And I had worked with him earlier. He was Principal Secretary to Mr. Kalyan Singh. I was his secretary then. So we had worked together. So he said, Anil, zara aaj sham ko aake tum Prime Minister ko health insurance samjhao. Come and explain health insurance. मैंने कहा मैं तो education secretary हूँ. नहीं तुमने बड़ी अच्छी एक scheme चलाई थी. RSBY. And we've been trying to explain to the Prime Minister and every time he gets annoyed. तो मैंने मजाक में उनसे कहा, मैंने कहा मेरी डांट क्यों पड़वा, अगर वो नाराज होते हैं तो मेरी डांट क्यों पड़वाना चाह रहे? नहीं वो स्कीम तुम्हारी बड़ी अच्छी थी, तुम आगे कोशिश करो. तो मैंने कहा सर फिर मेरा लोकल स्टैंड आई क्या है? किस बोले ऐसा है कि आज शाम को हेल्थ का रिव्यू है प्राइम मिनिस्टर के घर पे, एजुकेशन का भी रख देते हैं, तुम रहोगे वहां पर, अगर प्राइम मिनिस्टर तुमसे पूछते हैं तो तुम बता देना. That's how it was. Right. So I reached 7 Racecourse Road and the health secretary makes a presentation, after which प्राइम मिनिस्टर सेज कि आप लोग समझते नहीं है, मैं तो इंश्योरेंस की बात कर रहा हूँ, आप लोग इंश्योरेंस की बात करते हैं. फिर वो मेरी तरफ घूमे कहते हैं, अनिल जी आप रहे हैं इंश्योरेंस में, आपकी क्या राय है? अब मेरी राय वही थी जो हेल्थ सेक्रेटरी की थी. द डिफरेंस वॉज दैट आई हैड thought of, I thought what Prime Minister would be thinking. So I worked out an argument to convince him why insurance would help the government, the people, and would be good for everyone. I spoke for 15 minutes, and I often say that everyone knows the Prime Minister is a very good orator. He indeed is, but he's a better listener, actually. He heard me out for 15 minutes, not batting an eyelid. After I had finished, he said, Anil ji, aap sahi keh rahe hain. Insurance to honi chahiye. That day, Ayushman Bharat, it was christened later on, but was born. He agreed that we should have insurance in the country.
Fantastic.
But my approach used to be, initially I was, I did not agree with many people. Yeah. And that led to a lot of quarreling with them, disagreement, and my frustration as well. Then I gradually realized you should learn to hear people out. Yeah. As I keep saying that there could be some positive aspects in. And maybe you can reformulate your presentation in a manner that it becomes acceptable. Yeah. So this is not in cut and dried that you have to present it, take it or leave it. It doesn't work that way. Right.
So another valuable lesson. The reason why we have 2 of these and one of these, perhaps be a better listener than you are, always putting your point of view. Even the Prime Minister is, and we all know Modi ji has, such great oratory skills. But as we just learned, a great listener as well. What have been the core differences between, when RSBY was, actually formulated and Ayushman Bharat? What have been, some of the core differences? I know there's a lot of, stuff that it's actually built on.
The fundamentals are the same. The fundamental logic is the same.
Right.
But technology had evolved. Yeah. So you don't really require a smart card now that you are connected. There you have to have an offline system. Suppose you go to a hospital and the hospital is not connected. Internet was not so sound then. Yeah. So how do you find out what is the entitlement left of the beneficiary? Right. So you have to have an offline data to be housed on the smart card for the hospitals to understand how much entitlement is left and whether he's eligible or not. Right now, you get connected to the backend server and you get the data. So the technology platform has undergone a sea change.
Sure.
Secondly, RSBY, the maximum insurance cover was only 30,000. Right. I'm talking of 2008.
And now it's about 5 lakhs.
It's about 5 lakhs. Yep. So obviously, it will cover a lot more diseases. It will cover a lot more. And there are many more. I mean, it's certainly a much more improved version of RSBY. There's no doubt about it. But that's how it has evolved.
Yeah.
But the fundamental principles of insurance, of claim settlement are the same as were in the RSBY.
Right. And who picks up the tab? So let's just say someone goes into, a hospital slash, requiring medical care. Who picks up the tab? Is there an insurance company involved, or is it the hospital being reimbursed by the government?
There are 2-3 models that are working now.
Okay.
One model is that insurance company bids for premium,
Right.
and then it settles the hospital claims.
Okay.
The other is the government directly settles the claims with the hospitals.
Right.
So my personal view was it should be through insurance company for the simple reason that first of all, the government will know its liability upfront through the premium.
Agreed.
And secondly, all the malpractices that emerge out of hospital getting connected with people here settling claims, they can be dispensed with because there is a market tension between the insurance company and hospital.
Right.
So insurance company will not settle the claims unless it's absolutely clear because it's a business loss to them.
Got it.
Giving them.
Got it.
But for a government servant, it's government money, so anything can go. So, I mean, both models are working in the country.
No, I think it's a phenomenal scheme. I mean, right from the portability aspect. The fact is that someone could have been allotted this at a home, rural, village in Bihar, but he's working today in Delhi. But he can carry that, and there is still leftover cover for his family that is way back in Bihar. As well.
That's the best part. Way back in 2008, this could not have been visualized.
Yeah.
No scheme of the government was portable. No scheme except RSBY. Because of the smart card, then of course internet connectivity was not there.
Right.
So you could carry that entitlement to any part of the country. And you could get that benefit. It was not available in PDS. Now it's available in PDS.
Sure.
At that point in time, or MNREGA, it was not available.
Right.
So it was arguably the first portable scheme in the country.
A bit. And this is, of course, the second time that you'd actually been in front of the Prime Minister. There was a first time, which was a little more difficult because you had taken charge on the 16th of October. And on the 18th of October, you called in to have another conversation with the Prime Minister. And under very different and difficult circumstances.
Yes.
This is obviously when you were in the coal secretary.
Yes.
Just talk us through that day as well.
This was technically the first meeting with the Prime Minister.
Right.
And of course, the discussion was on power and coal.
Right.
Both were in trouble, actually.
Right.
So the power secretary made a presentation, 7 slides, I think, 6 or 7 slides. In each of the slides, he concluded by saying that this problem of the power sector is on account of shortage of coal. So every slide he said that. At the end of it, the Prime Minister, the first statement that he makes to me is, Anil ji, आपने देखा, आप कोयले की समस्या का समाधान कर दीजिए, देश की आर्थिक स्थिति सुधर जाएगी. These are his words. You sort out the coal mess, the economy of the country will boom.
And your viewpoint was that it wasn't, like the power problem was not necessarily only a coal problem.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do I tell that? A younger Anil Swarup would have disagreed with him.
Right.
But I started with agreement. I said, sir, आप सही कह रहे हैं. And then I made my point. I said, sir, पर ये कहना उचित होगा कि ऊर्जा क्षेत्र की समस्याएं कोयले की कमी से वजह से हैं. ऊर्जा क्षेत्र की तो और समस्याएं भी हैं. T&D losses हैं, जनरेशन की प्रॉब्लम है. तो he agreed with me. He picked up this word comprehensively. मैंने उनसे कहा कि सर इसको तो comprehensively देखना होगा. बोले हाँ अनिल जी आप सही कह रहे हैं तो समस्या को comprehensively देखना होगा. But what happened subsequently held me for next 2 years. He turned towards Mr. Piyush Goyal, who was the power and coal minister, and tells him, Anil ji सही कह रहे हैं, इसको आपको comprehensively देखना होगा. This created an erroneous impression in his mind, in the mind of the minister, that I was close to the Prime Minister. And thereafter I had an easy tenure as coal secretary. I didn't have much of a problem with Mr. Piyush Goyal.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear more about Mr. Piyush Goyal because he is today in the eye of the storm and he is out negotiating on India's behalf with no other than Donald Trump and all of his tariff related things. How is he as a person?
He's one of the sharpest guys. Forget ministers. Very sharp.
Yeah.
And he articulates his views very well.
Right.
And very emphatically, forcefully. And in a conversation, he comes across as a person who understands issues.
Lovely.
So he's a very sharp. And the only problem that I found was, I don't know how it is now, he used to get angry very soon. He used to get very upset very soon. I used to tell him also, sir, kya? Because when I was younger, I used to get very angry.
Right.
बहुत upset हो जाते थे. And I remember in one case, he started shouting at my joint secretary in the meeting itself. So I told him, sir, क्या करना है? भाई अगर आपको डांटना ही तो अकेले में डांटिए, आप पब्लिकली डांटेंगे वो बाकी काम कैसे कराएगा. सो आई यूज्ड टू टेल हिम कि साहब आप क्यों, और ही इज अ वेरी हार्ड वर्कर. आई मीन आई यूज्ड टू टेल हिम दिस ऑल्सो, सर अपना स्वास्थ्य का ख्याल रखिए. हेल्थ, I mean, not at the cost of health. रात में देर तक. He's a very passionate person. To that extent, he was very nice to me. I mean, to me, he was very nice. But he wasn't so nice to others, you know. He used to take them to task. So,
No, he seems to be someone who doesn't hold back his opinion,
Yes.
also.
Yes.
I mean, Piche, when that startup Mahakumbh happened, he had a thought and he put it out there. And the media picked it up and they kind of, blew it out of proportion.
my suggestion to him, and then and even now, is, there is a method in which you can convey your point of view.
Right.
You don't have to necessarily appear to be aggressive.
Yeah.
You can be polite and very persuasive.
Right.
I mean, he has such enormous potential, I tell you, because the guy studies, he reads, he knows, he speaks well.
Right.
The only thing is, he's on occasions intemperate. That for a minister at that level, when you've seen everything, it is not actually really needed.
Right.
He doesn't have to shout at people. And he can be a bit more careful about choice of words, because where you are sitting, each one of your word can be misinterpreted.
Right.
I mean, as secretary, I was to be very careful about what I'm saying. Because you are in sensitive positions where, I mean, take for example what happened to the election commissioner,
Right.
chief election commissioner.
Right.
I mean, he should not have said what he said. There's no gain, only pain.
Yeah.
Why should you say that? On occasions, it is not necessary to say everything. You
Right.
can keep quiet.
Right. Yeah. And today, we have the hopes of, millions of Indians, at least exporters, who are relying a lot on how the trade talks and the tariffs actually, play out in future, because it's not an easy situation right now.
If foreign affairs takes over commerce, then we are in trouble. Because the damage is not done by the commerce ministry there. No. The damage is more done by the statements made by the man at the top in foreign affairs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there again, for an ex-diplomat to so brazenly speak out the words that he does, I mean, he may have that point of view and he may be right also. But to tell somebody in a conference, in a meeting, in an open thing, you are nobody to tell me what I should do. Yeah. Should it be said? I mean, that's something which needs to be debated.
Agreed.
I mean, even if that guy is being stupid, you as a diplomat can't say that you are nobody to tell me what I have to do. I will choose my own path, which in any case, you'll choose your path. You don't have to tell somebody to say that you'll choose your path.
Right.
That does damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can get away with that within the country, but internationally, you're all equal.
So true.
And you can't tell somebody that even if he's a fool, you don't have to tell him that he's a fool. You don't have to necessarily, you can convey that in a more subtle manner that he's stupid.
Correct.
There have been diplomats who've done that.
Of course.
So you have to have that language to be able to convey a thought without appearing to be, a person who wants to ride a roughshod over others. That creates problems. To my mind, that has created a problem, which Mr. Piyush Goyal has to sort it out.
Well, again, fingers crossed that hopefully things will play out.
I hope so.
Again, there's we're in Noida.
No, he's very competent. There's no doubt about his competence. I mean, I've seen him very closely for 2 years. A very, very competent person.
Good to know.
And I'm sure he would have improved in his elocution as well.
Of course. So also in the book, there's an interesting, let's say, instance of technology. Okay, and it was when the first photocopier machine was actually brought into
Yes.
the office,
Yes.
and you had almost Gherao sort of situation again when people came and said that land records were copied by hand. So the copiers who were copying the land records said, "Hamara kya hoga?" Right. So it's almost in today's context when we are today in the AI world, and AI is coming, and there is a whole bunch of potential job losses that could happen there. So talk us about that, and then also what you see happening in the AI context in the world today.
See, again, I was district magistrate Lakhimpur Kheri, and I used to go to a room called record room. You know what?
Right.
Record room is a place where all the revenue records are kept.
Right.
And people apply for getting copies of land records. So it's a racket there. And that's when I understood what speed money was all about. Speed money was the more you pay, the quicker you get a copy of that. And the process was very cumbersome. The process was when I moved an application, then that file will be taken out of the record room.
Right.
And someone will sit down and actually write down what is written in the records.
Wow.
The second chap will compare and see whether the written part is right or not. And third person will sign it. So it goes through 3 hands, and the fourth one who takes the file out. So the more hands you have, the more chances of corruption.
Of course.
So that's where people paid up more to get it urgently.
Right.
So I had come from Lucknow and photocopying machines had just started emerging.
Right.
We had one in the secretariat.
Right.
So I had this idea, why does he take this trouble of writing down the whole thing? It can be photocopied. So I got a photocopier installed in the record room.
Right.
And then application came, file came out, photocopy taken, signed and given. So this speeded up the whole thing. So a group of delegation of advocates and other representatives came to me कि सर हमारे पेट पे लात क्यों मार रहे हैं? मैंने क्या मतलब? बोले सर कुछ हम ले लेते थे, कुछ और लोगों को दे देते थे, सबका काम चल रहा था और सर फिर ये 30 लोग लगे हुए थे, डेली वेजर वो अपने लिखते थे. तो मैंने कहा जिस गरीब आदमी से तुम पैसा लेते हो वो गरीबी आदमी आगे कॉपी लेने आ रहा है लैंड रिकॉर्ड की, उसका नहीं सोच रहा. तो जब उनको ये नहीं समझ में आया तो दे केम अप विद एन ऑल्टरनेटिव. दे सेड ऐसा है सर अर्जेंट एप्लीकेशन तो आप फोटोकॉपी कर दीजिए, नॉर्मल वैसे ही चलने दीजिए.
So the compromise was found.
कैसी बात कर रहे हो कि मतलब गलत है चाहे अर्जेंट है वो. So I didn't agree with that.
अच्छा.
So photocopying, that was my first brush with technology.
Right.
And I found how dramatic it was. What a transformation. And thereafter in my entire career, I used technology to the hilt. In fact, Coal Ministry was probably the first ministry where we dispensed with all files and papers. We didn't have a file or paper. And before that, I was in the cabinet secretariat in the project monitoring room. That's where I experimented. No file or paper. I distinctly remember Kumaramangalam Birla came to meet me along with his two CEOs.
Right.
He saw no file on my table.
Yeah.
He said, sir, this is first step. For the first time I'm seeing officer without a file on his table. I said, I don't have any files. He said, what do you mean? So I explained to him how I've digitized everything.
Yeah.
So then he turned towards his two CEOs and asked them, why can't we do it at our place? I said, you won't be able to do it. He said, why? I said, I can afford to be transparent. You can't afford to be transparent. To me, technology is so powerful. Right. And I use that in the Coal Ministry.
Right.
And in the next book that I'm writing, Governance and Corruption,
Lovely.
I'm touching upon how technology actually can transform governance and do away with corruption. Now, coming to the technology as it is emerging.
Right.
The problem that I see in the government, whichever government, is not artificial intelligence. It is attitudinal intelligence.
I like that.
If you have the right attitude, you will find the technology. Technology is there. Now the question is, how do you use the technology and whether you want to use technology? Yeah. I have written a number of articles and I have often wondered that Mr. Modi is so fond of technology. I can't tell you how fond he is of technology. But why isn't Prime Minister Office digitizing its files? You can do away. One of the biggest problems in this country is the delay in decision making. Okay.
Agreed.
Now, if it's a conscious delay, I can understand it, that there is some reason you don't want to take a delay. In my understanding of 38 years in bureaucracy,
right,
lot of delays are unconscious delays because you're not aware.
Yeah.
If I become aware that I am sitting on this file, it will be a burden on me for so many days. So that itself will, speed up the decision-making process. True. So to me, artificial intelligence will play a very important role, as it is already playing.
Right.
But if you don't use it appropriately, then what is the big deal? So before thinking in terms of artificial, let's look at the attitude part.
I love it.
Let's get into this aspect of using whatever technology that is available today to improve governance. Imagine if decisions do get taken, how much governance will improve? 100%. You look at the number of vacancies that exist as vice chancellors, as directors of PSUs. If Prime Minister gets to know it, one day I jokingly told him, sir, वो तो आपके पैड पे आपको एक बटन पे मालूम पड़ जाएगा.
बिल्कुल.
Once he gets to know of it, किसी हिम्मत नहीं होगी बैठने की. I remember in a meeting, not many ministers had the courage to speak to the Prime Minister, but Mr. Gadkari said, प्रधानमंत्री जी, फाइल तो आपके PMO में लंबित है. These are his words. All hell broke loose next day. Because, Mr. Modi very rightly does not believe in delays. He wants quick decisions.
Correct.
Now, his technology available for him to be aware whether and where the file is pending. He will not even have to ask anybody कि भाई file क्यों pending है. It will happen.
Dashboard for him to see
Absolutely.
Instantly. Yeah.
So, artificial intelligence, whatever little that I have known of it, can be of enormous use. But before that, we have to get that attitude, and that has to flow from the top.
Agreed.
Everyone should say, no more physical files to PMO.
And you've been, again, someone who's pioneered this, like decades ago. What is holding the government back? Why is they not doing this?
I don't know. I don't see. I'll tell you. My conjecture. I may be totally wrong.
Sure.
My power is dependent on your ignorance.
Okay.
So if you get to know what I know, I cease to be powerful.
Interesting.
So transparency eliminates that element of being powerful. You know, in coal,
Right.
after initial struggling and everything, after 2 years, I had only about 45 minutes of work in the ministry as coal secretary.
Wow.
So I had made myself powerless. I did not have any discretion. And that happened because of technology.
Yeah.
Whether it was auction or everything was transparently available.
Right.
You know, the biggest advantage is I also committed mistakes as coal secretary. But they were discovered almost immediately because every decision was available in public domain.
Right.
People pointed out, "Arey, ye galat hai."
And then you could take immediate action
Correct,
as well.
correct.
Unlike Mr. Gupta, who's your predecessor, and
Correct.
he didn't have
Correct.
that
I
liberty.
wish had they used technology at that point in time, people have pointed out straight away.
Yeah, those must have been crazy times. I mean, we're talking about what, 204 out of 218 licenses being
204.
cancelled. Yeah.
204 blocks.
Yeah. And I mean, to come in and take charge, I think the first few months would have been absolutely
tough.
chaotic.
Very tough. I rang up a friend of mine to ask him, "Yaar, your coal sector kaisa hai?" So he answered by asking me a question. Gangs of Wasipur dekhi hai kya? So that was it. It was terrible. I mean, CBI was after officers, after files. No one wanted to commit himself on the file.
Because there would be complete paralysis of like,
Complete
analysis or whatever you call it. I remember somewhere else you also mentioned that, of course, your repetitions, been very, very stellar, and you've never, really budged on what was your, conviction and point of view. But I remember on one of the podcasts you mentioned that, there was this way of, kind of coming into your, ecosystem and indirectly or directly influencing you. And I think you called it Nazrana, Shukrana,
Jabbrana.
and Jabbrana, right? So yeah, I would love to hear that in terms of how would it really work? Because I'm sure Bihar में काफी चलता होगा.
बिहार का तो मुझे पता नहीं, मैं तो यूपी में था. I was posted as Secretary Horticulture. This was 2003.
Right.
And things were pretty bad in UP. So one of my minister, the horticulture minister, who was known to be very corrupt, sent me an order in writing asking me to suspend a deputy director without giving any reason. Right. Of course, he was authorized to suspend. It was not an illegal order, but there was no explanation.
Sure.
So I rang him up. I asked him, "Sir, you asked me to suspend him. Kya kiya isne? What has he done?" He said, "Mujhse milne nahi aaya." So I found it very funny. I said, "I'll ask him to meet him." And the conversation was over.
Right.
Then I asked about this officer, and everyone told me that he's a very honest, efficient officer. I called him over. I asked him, "Yeah, tu milne kyun nahi? Why didn't you go and meet the minister?" He's very annoyed. He wants me to suspend you. He tells me, "Sir, मैं उनसे कई बार मिला हूँ, लेकिन जैसे वो मिलना चाह रहे हैं, मैं नहीं मिल पा रहा हूँ." That's when I coined this phrase. He wanted some Nazrana.
Yeah.
I have talked about 3 types of corruption: Nazrana, Shukrana, and Jabbrana.
Yeah.
I mean, he was expecting something from me. He said, "मेरे पास तो है नहीं कुछ देने को." Then I was a bit upset. I thought, कैसे इसको बचाऊं मैं? We went through a drill. I saved from his.
So the Nazrana would be like a kind of gift that you're giving when you're first meeting.
Nazrana
is like a thank you.
Yeah, Shukrana is like thank you, as it means Shukrana, thank you.
Correct.
And
What about the
Jabbrana is danda. Vasuli.
You will get posted out. You will get a
Vasuli.
Yeah. And to your mind, which is like the toughest to cope with?
You can handle Jabbrana.
You can.
Difficult to handle Shukrana. Because both are colluding. When 2 people are colluding, it will be difficult for you to stop. I'm going to elaborate this in my next book. Which is easy, how do you do it? And Shukrana is something, Nazrana is something which you can't, because in any case, you make an offering to God, no? In the hope that kab problem aayegi to upar wale se kahenge kuch.
Yeah.
That's so Shukrana and Nazrana will be difficult to hold. You can still do them.
Right.
But I think the focus has to be on Jabbrana. Because the trouble is where Jabbrana is actually. Real trouble is Jabbrana.
Correct. Yeah, because that can be physically, emotionally very damaging as well.
No,
right?
look at what happened recently. I read somewhere that an entrepreneur who was investing in Chennai was harassed by custom officers, and he's decided to take it off. What is that? That is Jabbrana.
Bilkul.
So if you look at various examples of Jabbrana, and all this can be tackled through technology.
It can be.
Jabbrana is the easiest to tackle through technology.
Yeah.
So you can do that. Because Shukrana, you can't handle through technology. I mean, I'm willing to give you a gift without expecting anything straight away.
Right.
I mean, just cultivating relations for future.
Yeah.
So how can you stop that? Very difficult. But Jabbrana is something you are unwilling, you are in the right. Shukrana could be that I want to do something wrong and I want you to help me do that. But I am right and you are still asking me money.
Yeah.
That's where the problem is, the real problem. That's
Agreed. And I think you touched upon a very important point when you mentioned this, entrepreneur in Chennai, because I spend a lot of my time, global conferences, representing India, a lot of, perspectives. And I think one of the biggest pain points that people globally are still saying that ease of business in India is still a distant dream.
See, I'm glad you say what you say. I was in the government when this Make in India thing happened. And I used to tell them, ये World Bank कब से decide करेगा कि ease of doing business है? या तो entrepreneur से पूछो ना. He will tell you where the shoe pinches. ये World Bank decide करेगा कि आप जो है 136 से 94 हो गए, फिर 36 हो गए. How can they decide? And sure enough, World Bank withdrew that ladder.
Yeah.
And you look at what happened to Make in India finally. Two important objectives. Number one, increase of manufacturing as a proportion of GDP from 13 to 24%. It's still 13%. So what is the big deal? So as against that, I mean, the idea was very good.
Right.
Make in India idea was very good.
Right.
The best would have been to sit with entrepreneurs. I mean, that's what I did.
Right.
I mean, when I talk about emotional relatability in the
Correct.
book, what is that emotional relatability? You sit with the consumer, sit with the target group, try and understand the problem and ask them to give you the solution. They will give you a solution.
Bilkul.
Instead of doing that, you do window dressing. It doesn't work that way. You have to engage with and allow them to speak. Now, I used to tell them, आप कॉन्फ्रेंस में पूछें किसी की हिम्मत नहीं खड़े होकर कह दे साहब ये गड़बड़ है, आप उसी को ठोक देंगे.
बिल्कुल.
So you have to have a one-on-one smaller group conversation where the objective is to understand without any prejudice.
Right.
That's very important.
Right.
You have to have the courage to enable others to speak their mind out. You may disagree. I used to tell everyone, यार मैं उससे बात करके, why should I deprive myself of the wisdom that may come out of him? Ultimate decision making is mine.
Yeah.
So why am I not talking to him? Let me talk to him. I still decide what I have to do, but I just may be benefited by what he's saying.
Right.
You get the other side. I'm surprised why is it not happening?
Yeah.
I mean, it can easily happen. Have conversations with people.
Bilkul.
Try and understand their problem. You can also tell them, भाई ये हम problem नहीं solve कर पाएंगे आपकी.
Right.
They will also appreciate the fact.
Yeah.
Few things you'll be able to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight, but a conversation helps you to understand the issue, to understand the person, and makes you better equipped to take a call which is beneficial to an entire group.
Couldn't agree more.
I have worked with organizations. I've also handled industry for a while. As Secretary Education, believe me, it was FICCI Arise that drafted a legislation for me, which was then accepted by the UP government. It can happen.
Can happen. Yeah.
Because I told them, bhai, you've come with this problem, now give me a solution. I don't have solution. So they sat with legal experts, with other people, drafted it. Of course, UP government changed it a bit, but the groundwork was done by them. It was in partnership. I've always believed this country requires public-private partnership.
Agreed.
You know, we are unnecessarily fighting with each other. There are good people on either side of the fence, in the public as well as private. There are good people. You know, in government we feel सब private से बदमाश है, पैसे बना रहे हैं. Private वाला समझता है हर जना government में जो बेमान है. Both are incorrect. There are good people on either side.
Yeah.
If all the rascals and the ruffians of the world can come together and make life difficult for us, why shouldn't good people come together? And public-private partnership, that will happen. Excellence, innovation will come from the private domain.
Right.
Scale will come from the government. The two can come together, should come together.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, 100%. Agree completely. So, of course, we have a bit of a rapid fire. And with the rapid fire also comes a goodie hamper, at the end of the podcast. But I thought, let's go ahead and I'll throw some questions at you.
Yeah.
And, the one or two, let's say, words or sentences that come to your mind, that's how we'll take it forward. What's harder, saying no to a politician or to a corporate tycoon?
To a politician is harder.
To a politician.
The reason is very simple. The politician is there with you, you have to be with him.
Of course.
You can get away with it with the corporate tycoon,
yeah.
but difficult to get away with the politician.
One reform in India that you wish you had championed, but you couldn't.
I did champion, but probably didn't carry it through, is transparency, use of technology and transparency.
Love that. If you were to define bureaucracy in one word, what would that one word be?
Attitude.
Love it. The most underrated quality of a civil servant?
Hard work.
Yeah. A myth about IS officers that you'd like to bust?
They are all corrupt.
Yeah, that is true. And again, you led by example all through. One file that came to you and you'll never forget signing it?
The file relating to Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana.
Love that. How about what's tougher to deal with? And because you had some, let's say, focus, with the media as well when you were, with the Chief Minister, Kalyan Singh, etc. So who's tougher to deal with, a media or a lobbyist?
Lobbyist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. One skill that you think every bureaucrat must learn in 2025?
Positive attitude.
Super. So when you were on your late night file clearances, late night work, coffee or chai? What was your
I never
preferred
worked
drink?
late.
Never worked.
I, by and large, left the office at 6 o'clock. So there was no late coffee or late chai. I never sat.
But
till
coffee
late.
is your preferred drink.
Used to be chai.
Used to be chai.
Coffee now.
Got it. One book that shaped your thinking.
The monk who sold his Ferrari.
Awesome. Robin Sharma. The toughest boss that you ever had.
I wouldn't like to name.
Okay. Or your favorite boss.
My favorite boss was Mr. Anil Lakhanpal. He was the Director General Foreign Trade. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. I think there are mentions of him in the book as well.
Yeah.
Your favorite holiday spot now that you've retired.
Goa.
Love it. If you could time travel, okay, and you could go back to your first day in a particular role, okay, which one would you actually choose?
As Director General Labour Welfare doing Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana.
Okay, love it. Coal auctions or education reform, which would make for a better Netflix show?
Education reform.
And we'll maybe touch upon that,
Yeah.
moving forward as well. One colleague that you've always admired and always wanted on your team?
A senior, Mr. D.K. Mittal. He was Secretary Banking and Insurance.
Lovely. A song that best describes your bureaucratic journey?
किसी की मुस्कुराहटों पे हो निसार.
Love it. Yeah. If not IAS, which career would you have chosen?
I would have been a professor somewhere,
Really?
teaching.
Okay. I thought pakka matlab CEO of a top corporate.
No. I am not cut out for that. I'm too blunt to be there. Yeah.
And 3 words, last question. 3 words people use most to describe Anil Swarup.
They have not used those words in front of me, so I wouldn't know. I hope they use the word honest, committed, and man of integrity. I hope they use these words.
I'm sure. Like I said, knowing your track record, and I in fact did have a chance to chat with a few people in the bureaucracy and civil service, and they had great things to say. So I think 100% that is there. So thank you for that rapid fire, and like I said, hamper coming towards you end of the session today.
Thank you very much.
Before we touch on this book, a little bit on the education piece, because you did mention I have moved from the dungeons of the coal mines, to the bright lights of education, and you were surprised by what you actually saw over there. So what were some of those things that shocked you?
What shocked me were the mafias of school education, because I felt that coal created a present issue, a present problem, present solution, but education was devastating the society.
Right.
And no one seems to be bothered about it. That was even worse.
Yeah.
It was horrific. Some of the mafias were playing with fire and creating problems for the future, because education impacts future, may not be the present. Coal may impact present and somewhat future, but education destroys future. And when I delved deep into it, because in this was perhaps the only assignment where I felt that I should have had more time. In all other assignments, I used to make myself redundant.
How long did you have there in the ministry?
I had about 20 months.
Oh, that's
It's too short a time to do something in education. I tried, I failed, I succeeded a bit. But it's too short a time, because the problems are much worse, much more intense, much more complicated, complex for it to be handled in the time that I had.
Yeah. No, I read about the part where you mentioned about how a delay in NCRT books would mean a windfall for the publishers.
Correct.
And it was intentionally done.
Correct.
Yeah.
Each one of them is Nakal Mafia. Shocking, absolutely.
Bilkul.
What sort of a generation are we creating where the schools are contracted out for copying? Shocker. I had heard stories, but I saw it myself.
You did.
When I saw it myself, I was shocked. I said, what are we doing? And it has the support of local politicians.
And these are going to be our future doctors, lawyers, and God knows what not.
That's why, people pass classes, they do the graduation, they don't learn anything.
Yeah.
They just get a
Right.
certificate.
And I mean, today, when even in corporate India, when people come applying for jobs, and that resume is looking so polished and everything else, and then once people are actually onboarded, you realize that kuch bhi nahi hai. There's no substance to what they
That's the
say
tragedy.
they've actually
That's the
done
tragedy.
and learned.
That's the tragedy.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
which is why they say that so much of young India that's coming into the workforce today is unemployable because the skills that either they've picked up or how they've gone about it is not the best.
And the tragic part is that the concern is not there. As Coal Secretary, I met the Prime Minister every month.
Right.
As Education Secretary, I met him only once to discuss health insurance.
Yeah. And this is an area where we have, 6% of GDP as spent?
No, we have to spend.
We have to spend.
That's what the National Education Policy says.
Right.
That you have to do that. Maximum that we've spent so far is 3.1%.
Wow.
And it's much lesser than that, usually.
Yeah.
So it's not a question only of money. It's a question of indulgence. Let me tell you, I used to discuss this at length and say, there are few things you don't have money, you can't do it. But who stops you from appointing vice chancellors in time? You know that this vice chancellor is going to retire.
Yeah.
Do that exercise in advance. Even now, central universities, large number of central universities. Then, while selecting vice chancellors, who you are appointing as vice chancellor, because he's going to run the show there. Now, these are things that you have got to indulge in intensively. Because it's unless you manage human resources appropriately, what is the signal you are giving? So, in education, a lot can be done. The frustration is not account of your inability to do things.
So true.
Frustration is an account of your capacity to do it, yet not doing it.
Right.
You feel frustrated because it can be done.
Right.
What stops the government from appointing vice chancellors on time? What stops the government from selecting vice chancellors from a panel of learned people rather than committed people?
I like that.
If you have committed people going there, they will only do commitment.
Very good.
They will not impart learning. So what has to be done is, please don't, you play with other things.
Right.
But don't play with education. It impacts the future. You have a right vice chancellor sitting in a university, वो पूरी university को ठीक कर देगा. In India is very typical that way. In India, Ayodhya was not run by Khanau. It has to have a Ramchandji. So you have to select the right Ramchandji for each organization. No compromise on that front. No ideology on that front. No commitment. The only commitment is to improve the quality of education. And I'm convinced if you get the right VC sitting there, वो बाकी, people ask me, आप कैसे 6 बजे निकल जाते थे ऑफिस से? My immediate subordinates, I interacted with them and then gave them total freedom. They ran the show. All my joint secretaries behaved like secretaries.
Brilliant.
They had my support and they did everything. You get the right man, I got the right people, and then give them delegated them to.
Right.
अब होता क्या है कि हम गधे को बांध देते हैं, रोड डंडा मारते हैं कि ये काम क्यों नहीं कर रहा. अरे भाई घोड़ा बांधो ना, अपने आप काम करेगा. So I think to me, human resource management is the key. The leadership has to look at primarily human resource management. You don't have to have expertise. That guy will do the job, but you select the right chap. The only objective should be delivery. If he can deliver, get him there. That can be done. In education, that should be done.
Very, very true. And I think you're right. Any organization, even corporate or again, the country, you put the right person on top and it's going to percolate downwards. Like I know you've had, conversations where you mentioned, while Mr. Manmohan Singh was a great economist, but, perhaps not the best person to be leading the country, when he actually did. Of course, today the Prime Minister has, a completely different viewpoint and we're seeing the results. Ek time hota tha jab hum bahar jate the, and we used to travel globally and we used to say India, people used to be like, "Arey yaar, India se to kaam nahi ho sakta." There used to be a big barrier. Today, when we say India, they're like, "Oh, interesting. How can we do business together?" So the entire perception has, also changed. But again, I think the man at the top plays a very big role, over there as well. Let's talk about some of the tenets in the book because I thought that was fantastic. And I only got a copy, and if you see, I've already highlighted and marked. I don't know how many pages in this because it was just that impactful. And in today's time, when you're on your gadgets so much, it's very rare that a book will grip me as much as this actually did. And I love the 8 points that you mentioned where you said to make something happen, okay, and not only for policy, but even for corporate, it should be politically acceptable, it should be socially desirable, it should be emotionally relatable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, judicially tenable, and environmentally sustainable. Just brilliant, right? But this obviously come from years of experience and being in the trenches.
When I write politically acceptable, it does not really mean a politician. It should be a decision maker. So It could be a consumer.
Bilkul.
Consumer is taking a decision for your product.
Right.
So am I presenting the product in a manner that it becomes acceptable to him?
Yeah.
So I can't do much to the consumer, but I can do a lot to myself in presenting my idea, service or product in a manner that he finds it good. So can I convey a value proposition to the consumer? That's what political acceptability is all about.
And it applies even in corporate culture.
Yes, it does.
Right? And so I was just going through this and I'm like, this applies in politics, this applies in corporate, this applies in a household also.
Yes.
Right? Even amongst,
anywhere.
any situation.
Between husband and wife. How do you present your point of view that she agrees? Is the most difficult part. I'm still trying to struggle there. But that's the way forward.
Yeah. So amongst all of these, I mean, again, if you for ladies and gentlemen who are hearing this, grab a copy of the book, because I just think it's not something that we can cover in the next few minutes, but I think it's just so well thought of and so well presented. And this is one aspect, right? The other aspect, which I thought is even more mind-blowing, is when you get into the section of you, which is from page 145 all the way to 250, you now have 22 points, okay, which go from, how you have to evolve as a person, stop blaming others, do your karma, live in the present, not in the past. You talk about, the ikigai and discovering your passion. Amongst these 22, which are some of your top? I know it'll be hard to choose, but which will be some of your top ones that you think non-negotiable, ye to karna hi karna hai?
Start with yourself.
Yeah.
That's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
You can't start with anybody else. Initially when I read Mahatma Gandhi, I read this phrase, be the change you wish to see in the world. I didn't understand it at that point in time. But now I understand. You can speak with conviction. You can conduct yourself with conviction if you are doing what you're expecting others to do.
Right.
So to me, the journey has to begin with yourself.
Right.
That is non-negotiable. You can't ask or expect somebody else to start the journey. You have to start.
So true.
And it could be with small steps. You don't have to. It's only in films that suddenly overnight you become a different man. No.
Very true. Very true.
Step by step, and that's what Kaizen is all about. Yeah.
Tiny habits and Kaizen as well. Yeah. So agree. What are some of the other ones that you mentioned? Of course, delegation you've already spoken of. I love how you say protect your team. So examples
it's important.
Yeah.
It's important. I learned it right from the beginning. I believed in protecting my officers. One example I gave when I was trying to protect the deputy director and I was transferred out.
Yes.
And it happened through and through my career because that helped me when I became Coal Secretary. The atmosphere in the ministry was very tense, tentative. People did not have confidence in each other. That's where my reputation that joint secretaries came to believe that if they did any bona fide wrong, this guy will stand by me. That helped a lot. Yeah. And that came through my previous decisions that I had taken to protect my team members. Right. And I did that till the end. 3 months before my retirement, the CBSE paper had leaked. Yeah. And the minister was insistent on removing Chairman CBSE. So I saw to it that she's not removed. So it helped me a lot because then they paid back to you. I mean, not that I did it for payback, but once you have that trust, then I could leave my office at 6 o'clock. They could do my work.
Agreed.
So it is phenomenal. One of the foremost trait of a leader is to make the team feel that you are there for them. Whatever be the time you are standing by them. That creates so much confidence that they will be able to do anything that you want them to do. So one of the biggest traits which I find in a leader should be to be able to convey this message to their team members that you will be there.
100%. Yeah, and when you mentioned right after that communication skills,
that's the key. Right? That's the key. Yeah. To me, one single factor that determines success or failure of an individual is communication skills. Communication skills does not merely mean speaking, as much listening. Yeah. So your ability to convey your thoughts in a manner that you are able to convince the other person about what you're saying will largely depend on your communication skills. So when I talk of emotional relatability, where I say that you should be able to convince others into believing in what you believe in, that can happen only through communication skills. So communication skills is the instrumentality through which you are able to convince others into believing in what you're saying. Suppose you have something else, you are unable to convey it, you are unable to package your idea appropriately, then you may have a great idea, but the others will not be able to relate to what you're saying. So you should be able to relate. One reason why I use these stories, my personal experience, is to convey and package my ideas in a manner that they start saying that this is not mere theory, this has actually happened. If it has happened, then the chances of their accepting my point of view are more than merely a theoretical postulate that I give them. This should be done. This is how it should be done. If it has been done, means it can be done. If it can be done, then you start believing that it can be done.
100%. And, 2 points right there. I think one is where you mentioned on communication. Truly, the quality of communication is the quality of your life. I think probably Tony Robbins, said that. And I so agree. And also, facts will tell, but stories will sell. And I think just the fact that you have that story that's, built into, all the examples that you've really given, there's relatability. I mean, today in the world of, unfortunately, coaching, training, consulting, there are so many people jinne kitabi padhi hogi. Okay, or they would have done some course and they kind of then position themselves as an expert. And I think the world could, really do a lot with, your experience, your expertise, to be on more stages, to get in front of more people, to get in front of students of today, right? Where they can also, take away. I mean, your energy, your charisma. I mean, we've been speaking for the last, 1 hour. You've been like 100% all in. So I think that's phenomenal, right? And I think that's what the world needs today is authenticity.
Yes.
I love, your definition of AI, where it's not artificial intelligence, but it's accountable intelligence, right? I love that aspect as well. What kind of advice would you like to give to, and we have a lot of youngsters who actually, listen to this. What kind of parting advice would you like to give to them? And a lot of them could be aspirants for the civil services. And many could just be looking at, starting careers or moving up in the career ladder. What advice would you like to give them?
To the youngsters, I'll say that discipline is the key to success. Yeah. And discipline means a bit of sacrifice.
Right.
If you are not prepared to sacrifice anything, then you're not going to gain. No pain, no gain. So you should be disciplined. And then being disciplined doesn't mean that you don't enjoy the moments that you're in. Enjoy the moments that you're in. Live in the present. Because the past is dead and gone. You can't do much to it. Future, you don't know. The only control that you have is on the now. And make the best of it.
Powerful words. So again, ladies and gentlemen, students especially, if you're listening in, starting out your careers, I think great advice. How about to people now in the services? Okay, again, I'm sure many of them, really look up to you. I'm sure many of them will, hear this podcast in due course as well. What advice would you like to give to someone who's perhaps a few years into the services, looking to make an impact? What advice would you like to give them?
Before you make an impact on others, do it to yourself. Start with yourself.
Fantastic.
Understand the limitations of what you can do. If you focus on what you can, that can will grow. But if you waste your time on what you can't, then you won't have time to do what you can.
Oh, wow. Again, such super words of wisdom. There's only that much you can cover in a podcast of, an hour and 10 minutes. We went nonstop. Anilji didn't even have a chance to have a sip of his coffee. But compelling conversation. I don't know why you don't do more podcasts in English, because I think, I've only heard yours and Barkha's conversation. There haven't been too many in English. But I think, again, a lot of our audience is there, globally. I'm sure they would love, to listen in on this one and all of that as well. So again, thank you so much for all those words of wisdom. Yeah. And like I did mention, since we had the rapid fire round, we do have a goodie hamper. So this comes to you from Shantanu and Nikhil.
Oh, thank you very much.
This is just a Shantanu Nikhil pen to
right.
some of your thoughts. There's of course a tie and some.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So that is
thank you.
And then I also have there is a product which I'll walk you through later. It's actually a scaling with GB. It's a goal planner. I'll walk you through that as well.
I see.
But that's something that we created, and you think you'll find that quite insightful.
Wonderful.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, 5 books. Of course, No More a Civil Servant. It's the next on my read. This one I have already read it. Okay, it's available on Amazon, next day delivery. Definitely go ahead and pick that up as well. If you do get a chance to meet with Mr. Swarup, definitely connect with him. I think extremely, influential, motivational. You call it, all of those things, and I think he ticks off all the boxes. Someone who really walks the talk and calls a spade, and someone who's done that all his life. Anilji, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here. Yeah.